Welcome outside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined this time by a Patriots contributor for WEEI.com, assistant editor of WEEI.com. You never knew you had so many titles.
No.
Ryan Hannable. Ryan, thanks for joining us. This is a week where the Patriots should just simply take care of business, get their 12th win of the year, wrap up the number one overall seed in the AFC, get their week of rest, and then get ready for the playoffs. I cannot see any scenario by which the Patriots don't go down to South Florida, even if it's raining, even if there's a hurricane going on, and really take care of a 5-10 Miami Dolphin team that is in complete shambles and is ready to pack it up for the winter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at what's going on down there. Team seems like a team that's ready to, book their tee times and get on with their winter and on with their off season. I mean, they have interim head coach Dan Campbell, which he's done a good job, but like you said, they're a 5-10 team. They've struggled of late. They really struggle in the opening quarters, and teams have just gone ahead of them, and the Dolphins sort of just mill it in, and that's what you expect with a 5-10 team. So yeah, like you said, the Patriots want to go down there, get out of there with 100% health, and then move on to the playoffs with the number one seed.
You know, I think sometimes we take for granted the functionality of what goes on inside Gillette Stadium here with the Patriots. And you contrast that with what happened this week on Monday with Brent Grimes' wife, the cornerback of the Miami Dolphins, posting comments on Twitter about something that only a player would know happened last week in practice, as it appeared that Ryan Tannehill, according to her, did not complete any passes in a 2-minute drill against practice squad defensive backs. Now, that is something that on a functional team, cat never gets out of the bag. But on a team like the Miami Dolphins, where you mentioned Dan Campbell took over for another coach who would have seemingly utterly lost control of the locker room, and Joe Philbin, Dan Campbell was great early on, but this is the kind of thing that doesn't bode well for his future in Miami.
Yeah, it's obviously not a good sign. Not necessarily saying that he's lost his team, but when you have wives posting on Twitter, and then you sort of see the fallback with players in that locker room sort of standing by Brent Grimes' wife and that comments, that's not a good sign. And that's a sign to me that team's already moved on to the postseason, and they really could care less what happens in this last game, which obviously goes well for the Patriots' favor. But yeah, it's not a good sign down in Miami, and not a good sign for Dan Campbell. So Sunday could be his last game, I think.
I would agree with you, Ryan. And certainly one more point on Ryan Tannehill, very much a fantasy quarterback in terms of putting up numbers, but not a quality quarterback. And I think if you take a private anonymous poll inside that locker room, you find a lot of resentment for $100 million being doled out to a quarterback who really hasn't accomplished anything down in Miami. Now let's move on to the team that everybody cares about here in New England. That is Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. I found it very interesting on a couple of levels here on Wednesday that Tom Brady talked about what it really means to get the number one overall seed. He said, home field advantage is great for our fans, and yes, we want to play in front of our fans, but really what number one overall seed means is you've, over the course of 17 weeks, done it better than anybody else in your conference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Patriots fans maybe take for granted, like you said earlier, that this team is really, really good. And it's hard to really do during the season, but sometimes you want to take a step back and just look at just how good this team has been with all their injuries that they've had. Granted, other teams in the AFC have had their injuries too, but nothing like the Patriots with the number of guys they have go down. So I think to Brady's point, it shows just that how deep this team is and how well they've played this year despite the not adverse circumstances.
The other thing that Brady touched on that I found interesting, Ryan, was the fact that you have to know, in his words, when the journey's over, when a play is over, and not take too many hits. And Bill Belichick, even on Wednesday, reminded the team about playing smart and knowing the situation. Brady gave some insight. He said, look, coach is always telling us, if you're going to throw a 2-yard pass and there's a higher probability that the pass might be intercepted, why are you throwing the pass? Well, in terms of self-preservation, and there's been so much talk this year down here in Foxborough about the injury bug that's hit this team, you have to be about preserving your body. And that's what Tom Brady talked about on Wednesday. And I think for the most part, Ryan, when you take a look at the way Brady has managed his body, Chris Price wrote about it on WEEI.com, the greatest 38-year-old quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Self-preservation is a big part of that.
Yeah, and to Brady's point, it's he was referring to when he's bringing pressure in the pocket and sort of taking a sack. And sometimes I think when you're watching the game live, you sort of see him duck down and sort of say, why did he do that? But there's a reason for that. It's because he knows when to take a sack, and I think that goes into the way that he's been able to play as long as he has without getting injured. Is he doesn't put himself in vulnerable positions like say a Tony Romo or a Ben Roethlisberger for that matter. So he's played the game long enough to know what's right and what's wrong, and sometimes it's best just to take that sack and move on to the next play. And I think that's a major reason why he's still playing like the way he is at 38 years old.
Well, and the other thing to also note about that type of philosophy, Brady told us that he tells the receivers that when I'm throwing you the ball, I try to take care of you and try to make sure that I get across to you, look, if somebody's coming and you know they're coming, get down. Catch the ball, obviously. That's point number one. But point number two is don't take a hit when you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a major key for them right now moving forward, especially in this week against the Dolphins in Week 17. I mean, say Julian Edelman or Danny Amendola play, you don't want those guys taking big hits that sort of jeopardize their playoff chances. So I think that definitely goes into this week that if a receiver is vulnerable, get down. Don't risk the fact of getting hurt because it's simply not worth it at this point.
This is a question I want to ask you, Ryan, because I know you have monitored it incredibly well throughout the year and last year as well, and that is the time to throw, the time Brady has to throw. Have you noticed a trend late in the season of Brady getting rid of the ball faster, especially with guys like Amendola not available?
It's been a lot slower. He's been earlier in the season when they had their full complement of offense. That he was taking an average of probably 1.9 or 1.95 seconds from snap to throw, and then since Edelman and Amendola went down, that number has probably gone up to like 2.2 on average, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking about half a second in the pocket, that's a lot for an NFL quarterback. And Brady's at his best when he's getting the ball out quick. So that's been one of the downfalls of losing Edelman and Amendola for these times is those short, quick routes just aren't there because Keyshawn Martin can't run that same route as Julian Edelman, which I think is a major reason why Brady and the offense has struggled of late. So I think going into the playoffs, it'll be great for him to get those two guys back.
The other thing I think to note regarding Edelman and Amendola, I think both of them are going to make the trip to South Florida this week. They were both on the practice field here on Wednesday. Your best guess right now as to Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola playing this weekend in Miami?
I think Edelman's sort of the bigger question because, I mean, he coming off his foot injury, if you look back and do the same time frame as Des Bryant, who had the same injury, he would be coming back this weekend. So, I mean, do the Patriots want to risk him going out there for Week 17? Yeah, maybe you want to get him out there just to see how he looks with Brady and sort of get him back onto that feel of things as we go into the playoffs. So with Edelman, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays. And then Amendola, it's a question, I don't know. It was tough to see him come back from the injury and then re-injure that same knee on sort of a non-contact play. So maybe they're extra precautious with him because he's been not as long as Edelman. So I think, like you said, they'll make the trip, and then Amendola might be more of a game time decision, but I think Edelman plays.
All right, you were on the practice field watching them stretch and warm up for what the availability was here on Wednesday, and there were three notable absences. Dante Hightower was not on the field, Rob Ninkovich was not on the field, and Dakota Watson was signed yesterday on Tuesday, maybe for some depth. Domino effect on the roster if Ninkovich is not available to play, and obviously Sebastian Vollmer was not on the field. Your breakdown on what those three absences, Vollmer, Ninkovich, and Hightower mean?
Well, we'll start with Vollmer. It was reported yesterday that ankle injury is not serious, which is a good sign. Obviously, when you see a guy get carted off, that's not a good sign. But it seems like they dodged a bullet with him, and he'll be ready to go for the playoffs. He won't play this week, but I think that's just the way it is. Not really a huge deal. With Hightower, obviously everyone saw on Sunday just how he didn't really look the same. He was clearly hobbled by that knee. He took some plays off, didn't play every series, and he was banged up. And even on the air with WEI on Monday, he admitted that he's definitely not 100%. So I think in his case, it's best to have him take that Week 17 off and get fully healthy for the playoffs. And then Ninkovich, he was banged up early in the game, but returned, didn't miss much time. But we saw him Monday in the locker room, and he was lumping around pretty good. So with, like you said, the signing of Watson, I don't think Ninkovich plays this weekend, but I don't think it's a long-term injury. I think he'll be ready for the playoffs. And as the general theme for this week is make sure the team is fully healthy for the playoffs. It
absolutely has to be the number one priority. Even I would say even more than the number one seed, but I think the Patriots take care of business on Sunday and wrap up the season with their 12th win of the year. They finished 12-4. I'd find it hard to believe, or 13-3, I should say. I think they're 12-3 going into the season finale. I think they get win number 13 on Sunday. In terms of the preparation, and we know that the team is leaving later on Thursday afternoon after practice. You see the people streaming in and out of Gillette Stadium. The Boston Bruins were just on the ice having a family skate behind us, and it is great for the fans to see this. But there is the reality of what the football operations have to go through, and they're on a kind of a crammed schedule this week with the team leaving on Thursday after practice. Your read of Bill Belichick this week in terms, he's had to answer the question, or he's been asked the question as to whether or not he had any input into the Winter Classic. He really gave a non-answer on Tuesday in his conference call. But your impression of how Belichick and the Patriots football operations are handling all of this?
I think they're handling it well, but obviously it's not ideal. I don't think any coach wants to go into their biggest game of the regular season right now and having to leave early and have all their travel plans change and preparations change. It's just not ideal, but I think in the end it just comes down to the natural, coach versus owner decision making. And, obviously this is going to bring great publicity to Gillette Stadium, and it's a great event.
And revenue.
Oh, exactly. And it's hard to not have here, but when you're the football coach, all you really care about is the football team. And it's not a major inconvenience, but they've been here for 2 weeks behind us, and they've been around Gillette Stadium, and I'm sure that the Patriots' travel plans were affected, obviously, but also just the day-to-day plans here at Gillette have changed, so obviously it has some impact. But in the grand scheme of things, them going down to Miami a day or two early isn't really a huge deal. It even benefits them, I think, a little bit. They can get used to the warm weather, so I don't think it's an excuse, but it's definitely an inconvenience, and Bill Belichick and the Patriots are, dealing with it.
All right, the Patriots will leave on Thursday afternoon after practice for the warmer climes of Miami, Florida, South Florida. Yours truly and Ryan Hannable will be down there. It looks like we're going to get some rain down there. We're not going to get a lot of sunshine, but who's complaining when the weather is about 85 degrees, right?
That's right. Exactly. And we're here outside in the cold, 25 degrees and snow on the ground, so we're making out in the deal.
Yeah, we shouldn't be complaining too much, and we won't. We'll be down in Miami, yours truly and Ryan Hannable, bringing you all the coverage on WEEI.com. Be sure to follow Christopher Price on WEEI.com, as he will be writing about the game as well. Complete coverage starting on Sunday morning throughout the game and post-game as well. Outside Gillette Stadium and the Winter Classic, he is Ryan Hannable. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.